Well, hello to my Sunday school friends. It is so nice to see you, and I am delighted that we have this chance to talk together again. If you remember, the last time we got together, we met a young woman named Ruth. Right? There was a woman named Naomi. She and her husband and their sons had moved to Moab because there was a famine in Bethlehem. And after a while, those boys got married in Moab, and one of them married a woman named Ruth, and one married a woman named Orpah. But then tragedy struck, and the dad in the family died, and then a little while later, both of the sons in the family died, and there was just these three women left together. So Naomi decided to go back to Bethlehem, and Orpah decided to stay in Moab, but Ruth came with Naomi back to Bethlehem. And remember, we talked about it, that Ruth said this beautiful thing to Naomi, that wherever you go, I will go. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. Where you die, I will die. Just this beautiful declaration of love. And so finally, Naomi let Ruth come with her, and they went back to Bethlehem. Now, when they got to Bethlehem, they need to eat, right? And they didn't have jobs, and they didn't have husbands, and well, luckily, there was a tradition in Israel that allowed for people to do something called gleaning. This was one of the ways that Israel took care of its poorest citizens. That if I'm a farmer, at harvest time, I would send workers out into the field to cut the grain, but they wouldn't cut all of it. They would leave several rows of grain around the edges of the field. And anything they dropped, they couldn't pick up. That you're not allowed to pick up stuff once it hits the ground. And in this way, the poor could follow behind the reapers, and they could glean. They could take that grain from the edges of the field. They could pick up the grain that fell on the ground. And it was one of the ways that the poor were able to eat. So Naomi and Ruth get back to Bethlehem, and it's the barley harvest time. They have to eat, and so Naomi tells Ruth that she should go out and find a place to glean the next day. So Ruth does that, and she goes and she finds a field, and she works very hard gleaning behind the reapers. Well, the field belonged to a guy named Boaz. And Boaz came out in the middle of the day, and he greeted his workers, and he said, "Who's that over there?" And his worker said, "Oh, that's the Moabite woman that came back with Naomi." And Boaz said, "Interesting." And he went over to talk to her. I think he thought she was kind of pretty. He went over to talk to her, and he said, "You are welcome to glean in my fields, and you should stay in my fields. I've talked to my workers, and no one's going to give you any trouble. And I've talked to the young women who work for me, and they're going to make room for you in their group, and they're going to take care of you. And if you're hungry, we'll feed you. And if you're thirsty, you can drink from the water jugs that my employees drink from." And she fell on the ground. She was so surprised and so moved that this man would notice her and protect her and take care of her. And she said, "What have I done to gain your approval?" And he said, "We've been watching you, and we know that you came here with your mother-in-law and that you've been wonderful to her, and may God bless you and protect you for everything you've done for your mother-in-law." Well, that was very nice. When it came time for a break, for a meal, Boaz made sure that she had bread and that she had something that she could dip the bread in. He gave her all kinds of barley. She ate until she was stuffed and had a little left over. And he talked to his workers, and he said, "Make sure you drop a little bit extra in front of Ruth. Make sure that you're kind of careless in front of her so that she'll get plenty of food for herself and for Naomi." And so everyone went along with that. Boaz was the boss. It was his field. It was his crop. And by the end of the day, she'd done really well. Ruth had quite a bit of grain, and she went back home with all this grain, and Naomi said, "For goodness sake, where did you get all that grain?" And she said, "Well, I was gleaning." "Well, whose field were you in?" It turns out it was a guy named Boaz, and he was really nice to me. He took really good care of me. And Naomi said, well, as it turns out, he's a close relative of ours. He's a close relative of my late husband, of your late father-in-law. You should go to his fields every day during the harvest season. You should go there. He'll take care of you. He'll protect you. You'll be safe. And thanks be to God that God guided your steps into that field and you found such generosity for us. Now, that's where we'll end today. But Ruth is going to go back to Boaz's fields, and he's already decided that he's kind of interested in her. And I bet you can figure out where this story is going. All right? We'll get there next week. Again, thank you for joining me for Bible school time, for Sunday school time. It's always wonderful to see you, and I pray that God will continue to bless you to make you grow strong and smart and good and wise. See you next week. Bye-bye.